Hi, I'm Ruth and welcome to the Flow into Health podcast. What does it mean to flow into health? It means living in sync with the energy around you, things like your menstrual cycle, the moon, and the seasons. It means going with the flow and softening into what you may not like in your life and learning to release resistance. And it means understanding how energy flows in our bodies so we can optimize it and feel our very best.
Welcome back to the Flow into Health podcast. Today we'll be talking about how energy works in our lives and how we can more easily create the life that we want. It might sound a little out there, but once you realize that what our lives look like is a result of what we think all day, you realize how much power you actually have to control your life. For example, when we approach people with anger, what do we get back? Usually anger. When I'm having a stressed day and get frustrated quickly with my kids, you know what I get? Stressed out and angry kids. My kids reminded me of this the other morning. I woke up feeling just grumpy. I did not want to get out of bed, but I had to get them ready for school. I was talking to them with that energy, and they were not having it because they can feel all of that. They were fighting me to get ready for school, and they just kept talking back. Then my daughter put on the Brozone song from the new Trolls movie. If you're not familiar with it, it's a remix of a bunch of boy band songs from the late 90s and early 2000s, and those songs are totally my jam. Spotify picked a remix version of it that was a little more upbeat than normal, and so it caught my attention, and it got me dancing around the kitchen while I was preparing breakfast. The next thing I knew, I was in such a better mood. I was reacting to my kids with laughter and a lot more presence, and then they were in a better mood too. The morning took a total 180. Sometimes random things like a song can change our energy, but we can also do it intentionally. When we think thoughts that make us feel good, we approach life differently than if we think things will never work out. And that is why selecting our thoughts becomes important.
I was talking to my friend the other day about a theory I heard about the Big Bang. I wish I remember where I heard it so I could give credit to the source of this theory, but the idea is that there is a God, or you could use the word source or universe. I think of it as the energy that underlies everything. It's the energy you feel when you meditate and stop your thoughts and you enter a timelessness and peaceful feeling. That is source. We are all of source, and we all feel source when we stop our human mind. And this source energy is all-powerful and can create anything. They are the master manifester and can create exactly what comes into their awareness. When they have a thought or idea, it instantly happens. So one day Source is thinking, I wonder what would happen if I didn't know I was God. And poof, our universe is created. We have trillions of stars expanding farther than our human minds can comprehend. It's massive. And I think of it as pretty much the definition of infinity. I believe that there's no way there aren't other intelligent beings out there. If each of the trillions of stars out there is a sun to another solar system, there must be other locations that can support life. Want me to prove it? Well, I can't. Honestly, up until just a little while ago, I wanted to prove everything, to help my mind understand, to help convince other people of what I believe. But I've decided that for me, that's just a waste of my time, because I can decide what's true for me, intentionally. We all do this unintentionally all of the time. We tend to have an idea and just stick with it. How hard is it to change somebody else's mind? And when we unintentionally pick a thought to believe, do we consider what the thought is doing in our life? Is it beneficial or does it create stress? For me, the idea that there's this all-powerful energy that created us makes life feel a little less stressful. The deadline or the screaming children aren't so important when it turns out we're just an experiment created by Source. That we're all just an aspect of this energy, living our lives as different facets. Living through unique and novel experiences, having the polarity of our universe always there in the background. We're all a part of Source, and yet we feel totally independent. We're all perfect and good inside of our soul, but our humanness makes it feel good to do bad things. These things are always there, and for me it feels better to believe that it's meant to be there, and it's a learning experiment for all humans, for Source as a whole. Right before I was preparing this episode, I was listening to Christina Rice's podcast called Multidimensional. She happened to be talking about how at one point in her life, she wasn't very confident. So she started to pretend to be confident, and it felt so good that she continued to pretend until it became her truth. And I loved this example because feeling into different aspects of ourselves is another way that this shows up. Do you consider yourself shy, or scatterbrained, or unathletic? These labels we give ourselves are all made up. I was told my whole childhood that I'm shy, and so I took that with me. No, I don't want to go to that networking event. I'm too shy. While I do believe that we all have natural tendencies, and I think a lot of these tendencies show up in our astrology charts, we can also try on different personality traits to see how they work for us, to use them to our advantage. And we can decide for ourselves what we want our personality to be. So, how do we do this? First, we want to know what thoughts we're already thinking, and then we want to know what those thoughts are creating in our life. Many years ago, I became obsessed with the Life Coach School podcast, and I loved listening to other coaches talk about self-coaching. They all started with a thought download. So you sit down and decide to write absolutely everything that comes into your head, from the mundane things like, what should we have for dinner? To things that you wouldn't want other people to know you're thinking, like, I can't believe she colored her hair like that, it looks hideous. For 5 minutes, write down all of the thoughts in your head. You can destroy the paper when you're done, so let it all out. One thought that always seemed to come up in my thought download was, I don't have enough time for fill in the blank. I was thinking that all of the time about so many different things. And what does that thought do to me? It stresses me out. It makes me feel nervous, and my brain starts overthinking all of the ways to get everything done. And all of that brain energy depletes me. And so I end up tired, and I end up doing way less than I could be doing. But what happens if I change that thought to, there's enough time to do everything that needs to be done? Suddenly, my brain is a lot calmer. If I believe that thought, truly believe it, I stop the stressing and just start doing the things that need to be done. And that way, more things get completed. So not only does the outcome become better, but the energy behind it also changes. I go from frenetic to thinking, I need to do all of the things, to calm, to, okay, this is step one. I feel like doing this part next. And that helps my mindset and also my nervous system. Think about an area of your life where things aren't going the way you want them to. Can you sit down for 5 or even just 2 minutes and write down all the things you're thinking about in that area of your life? Then we can use that life coach model. How does that thought make you feel? What actions do you take when you feel that single word emotion? And what results do you get from that action? Now we go backwards. Instead of the result you're getting, what result do you want? What action would you take to get that result? What feeling would help you take that action? And what can you think to create that feeling? That is the thought you want to consciously think instead. However, this might sound easier than it really is. When we have thoughts that are constantly running through our head, they're pretty stuck there. They are our default. And changing the default takes a ton of awareness. When you're aware you're thinking the thought, you can stop the original thought and switch to the new thought. I also like to use new thoughts as affirmations that I put in my phone background, or sometimes I'll repeat them in the morning. I've also used EFT tapping to clear the old thought and help myself stick to the new thought. You can try whatever you think will work for you. Changing these thoughts a little at a time will change the way you approach your life and give you the new outcomes that you want. And so I hope you'll try this and let me know how it works for you, or if you have any questions. As a quick summary, think of something in your life that isn't going quite the way you want it to. Write down a bunch of thoughts you have about this topic and select a juicy one, or one that you know is playing in your head over and over and over. What does that thought make you feel, and what does that feeling make you do? What result do you get from that action? Now, what result do you want instead? What action will you need to take to get that result? What feeling makes you do that thing? And what thought made you feel that feeling? And that's the thought I want you to think consciously this week. Let me know how it goes for you. If you enjoyed this episode, remember to subscribe so you can be notified when new episodes are released. And if you know of anybody else who might enjoy this content, I'd really appreciate you sharing the Flow into Health podcast with them. If you can't think of anyone else to share the podcast with, a 5-star review really helps others find the podcast. Thanks for listening today. I am so grateful to the podcast listeners, and I want to continue creating content that you want to hear. If you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear them, and maybe an upcoming episode will be recorded with you in mind. See you next time.